we suggested we will start. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the third day of RPKI week. Earlier today, my colleague Max Tukey did a rerun of the RPKI tutorial. Some of you attended that one as well. So thank you so much for being part of today's proceedings. My name is Aftab Siddiqui. I am part of Manners initiative, which you are all aware of. And with me, I have a lot of friends today. Today's session is dedicated to the RIRs. And RIRs are Manners partners, have been supporting from the very beginning of the initiative and have been a very crucial part of the whole routing ecosystem, I would say. But that's it from my end. I'll hand it over to the moderator of today's session, our very good friend, Andrew Gallo, who is also the Manners Steering Committee co-chair. So Andrew, over to you. I'll just sit on the corner.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for joining. As Aftab mentioned, I'm the co-chair of the Manners Steering Committee. So thank you for joining. We have with us today a great panel of representatives from the 5 regional internet registries who are going to discuss roadblocks to RPKI deployment. So we'll hope to get a lot of good information and experience and operational experience and what we've seen in the various deployments and uptake in RPKI. So if we could go through and do a brief introduction, I'll call off some of the members of the panel. If you can introduce yourselves, where you're from, and then we'll get started with the next round. So David and Juki from Afrinic, please.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. I'm David from Afrinic, originally from Kenya. I think this is one of my first interactions directly with some of you. But my role at Afrinic, I'm a senior systems engineer with infrastructure and security operations. So I've been handling a lot of the RPKI related day-to-day operations for the last, let's say, couple of years, but I've not really had an opportunity to come out and present anything. I think I'm sure most of you are familiar with a colleague of ours, Amrish, who is now with ISOC. He was the one who was handling a lot of that operation. So I'm really glad to have the opportunity to be here and talk about some of the lessons that as Afrinic we've learned in terms of adoption and the current status and some of the way forward and things that we plan to share in the short term and then in the long term with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Carla Scarda from APNIC, please.
Hi, I'm Carla Scarda from APNIC and originally from Kenya as well, believe it or not. so that's something David and I have in common, which we just realized recently when we met for the first time face-to-face at the Afrinic conference just last month. So I'm also really delighted to be here and to see all of your faces. I think most of your faces here for the first time, except for Pupidu, who has kindly agreed to stay up as long as I sponsored his popcorn. So if there are any technical questions, I'm definitely going to be throwing to him. He doesn't actually know that yet. But it's a great pleasure to present on behalf of APNIC and some of the exciting things that we've got in store and some of the little bit of the roadmap that we've been on and the roadmap ahead. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to be invited to speak here today.
Thank you, Carla. Brad Gorman from Aaron.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Brad. I'm the product owner for RPKI here at Aaron. I do Headed Beast. I'm speak with people here and in person and listen to suggestions, get your recommendations of things that either need to be developed or things that need to be fixed. And then on the flip side, I'm also responsible for driving the development and the roadmap internal to Aaron, building up the asks from the community. And in history, in the past, I've been a network engineer for many, many years.
Thank you. Carlos Martinez from LACNIC, please.
Thanks, Andrew. I must confess that with Carla and Carlos, I got confused at first. I was almost ready to speak when I realized there was someone with a name similar to mine. Well, good morning or good afternoon to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this panel. My name is Carlos Martinez. I'm currently LACNIC's Chief Technical Officer. I've been with LACNIC for almost 12 years. And I've been involved with RPKI since the very beginning. It was a very, very small code base. I'm really interested not only sharing with you guys what we have in store for RPKI, but as brother mentioned, I would like to listen to the community and perhaps incorporate in our roadmap things that the community feels that could be good to have. So I'm here to share with you a few things, but also I would like to listen to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carlos. Natalie Treneman from RIPE NCC.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. That would be me. Yeah, I'm Natalie from RIPE NCC. I have been working at RIPE NCC for the last 15 years. You can hear from my accent, I'm Dutch, very much. And yeah, I'm since now 3 years working as the routing security program manager for RIPE NCC. And in that capacity, responsible for the RPKI roadmap and everything we do around it. And today I look very much forward to the dialogue and hear what my fellow RARs have planned for this year.
Great, thank you. With the introductions, I believe we have some presentations that some of the panelists want to share. Carla, do you have some slides? Or do you want to? Okay, great. Why don't we start with you, please?
Lucky first, right? Okie dokes. Let me just see if there is. Oh, there we go. I was looking for where to share my screen. Here we go. Okay. How's that? Can you see this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we were asked to just kind of throw together 5 to 7 minutes just talking about perhaps where we've been and where we're going to. So I thought I would start by just giving you a 5-minute snapshot or 5-minute snapshot to respond to the question that was posed to the panel on how APNIC is doing in RPKI deployment and actions we've taken it to increase uptake and support. And now I'm just going to move this out of the way. Sorry, I've got my Zoom thing right where I don't need it. Let me just, sorry, give me 1 second because I can't find any of the control buttons. There we go. Okie dokes. So going back in history a little bit, my esteemed colleagues will probably remember this a lot more than I do because this is relatively new to me. But the program was birthed back in 2009 and APNIC joined its voice to this call back in 2005 with a massive targeted campaign that included a pile of merchandise, training and more training, as you can see here. And also t-shirts, banners. I bet you some of you still actually have those t-shirts in your wardrobe from this campaign with this lovely tiger that you see here. But it was just a massive awareness campaign that we ran, and that kind of continued on for a number of years. Fast forward to last year, 2021, I guess it kind of reached critical mass and the pendulum had started to swing the other way, which means we had 2 problems. Firstly, we're running at pace, trying to keep up with the demand for training and assistance with implementation. good problem to have. But secondly, we have a bunch of invalids as a result of a set and forget culture that seems to permeate all of our extremely busy lives. So as you can see here, this little picture doesn't look so appealing. So what do we do? Well, start a new campaign, of course. So articles, as you see here, these are some of the blog the blog names that you may be familiar with. And I think we covered every possible white space with articles and email campaigns and images of soap suds and brooms and buckets and scrubbers to try and encourage you to clean up your invalids. So back to that good problem to have. So it kind of did move from pushing onto the community, trying to get people to engage with this product, to pull where all of a sudden there was an increase in demand for RPKI, large networks deploying RPKI validations, ISPs requiring downstream to create ROAs, and APNIC upstream ISPs implementing RPKI validation. So these drivers meant we had to facilitate self-service as much as possible. So what have we been working on? Firstly, we scrutinized our processes to improve usability and fix annoying problems and recurring issues that our members were facing. So we've done some work on the ROA interface to minimize incorrect creations, specifically the max length issue. Auto-populating the max length field was confusing in some instances. So what we did was we made sure that people understood what the challenges would be if they just accepted the default that was in there, and gave you a few more interesting options there. We're also working on trying to make error message such as these permission levels more obvious, so that some of the things which we thought were really intuitive came back. The feedback that we got was it wasn't so intuitive. And also giving access to tech contacts with appropriate two-factor authentication rather than locking them out, shortening the entire process so that you don't have to run through a whole chain of command to set up or fix your ROAs. So as you can see, that was the original length here. Access to RPKI had to first of all seek permission from the corporate contact, but now the whole thing is simplified with the two-factor authentication. But wait, there's more. So the training team, as you can see, the Academy, they have released a new RPKI virtual labs. They are perpetually doing updates, and the Academy is making this new material available as broadly as possible. I encourage you to look at Dash. We've added suspicious traffic alerts, we've added routing information pages, and RPKI mismatch tools in Dash make it easy to check for invalids. A lot of collaborative efforts with the NIRs, particularly on training initiatives and technical support. And did I mention training and deployathons and NOGs and presentations and talking about it incessantly at our APNIC conferences. So what are we responding to? Because this was another question posed at the beginning of ahead of this session. So here I want to introduce you to my favorite UX designer, Lily Chi, who is wondering why I'm making her famous for working so hard on it. But she's a rock star example of the whole team of rock star designers and developers who pour an enormous amount of effort into tracking your fingerprints all over our website and seeing where you get stuck and abandoned ship and then fixing those issues. So not only do we have a team internally working on this, but we also have a growing volunteer user feedback group who are giving us some really invaluable insights, and obviously our own team's experiences across the different focus areas in APNIC. So if your voice isn't being heard in any one of these particular areas, then it's, as my esteemed colleagues have already said, that's exactly why we're here today. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear your feedback and to get some direction from you about where we go from here. So looking at the roadmap roadmap ahead. We have just delivered a 2-week overlap option to facilitate live transfers. That literally went live, I think, not last week. No, it was last week, Monday. So what that's basically done is given you a period of time that you can actually make before you break. So more broadly, we have also been working on the ROA pre-validation, which is going to be delivered now in Q3. Add RPKI valid alerts and Dash, which I've explained already. And also coming in next quarter, you will be able to actually subscribe for those alerts. So as I said, keep an eye on what's happening in Dash. So we're also working on more robust warning messages where the activity that you're about to undertake is going to create an invalid, upgrading the underlying systems and increasing redundancy and reliance, and always updating along with our training, also updating our help centers and articles, and continuing to upskill the help desk team. So if you would like to keep an eye on what's coming, I invite you to check out the roadmap, which is available online here at roadmap.apnet.net. It not only shows you what's happening with our product team and the developments that they are making in this particular area, but also broadly across the organization. So that's in an effort to increase our transparency to the community. And as you can see at the bottom here, we've got the various different things that the various different statuses that you can go. There's other filters that you can have a look at. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, right. Yes, the final ta-da. So some of you may already be aware, and certainly the other members of the RIRs will be aware that the NRO is launching an RPKI program, which will provide more uniformity across all the RIRs in the different services. And so at this stage of the game, I really don't know anymore, so I can't tell you anymore, but I think that it is really just important to say that this is something that is receiving a lot of attention broadly across all the different RIRs. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. Natalie, do you have slides you want to share?
Yes, I do have a few. I think I have them kind of ready. Let's see if that works. All right, you should be able to see something now. Can I see thumbs up, down? Yes, awesome. Okay, great. Not as fancy slides as Carla, but I made an attempt. First of all, everybody likes to see graphs, so I thought I'll start with a graph up and to the right, as we know it. And this also shows a little bit the trend we see with RPKI in general. This is if we just look at the certificates, so the CAs that people generate. It's almost 18,000 now. We expect to hit 20,000 somewhere late this year if we follow the trend. So that's good. You see a little dip around December there. That's normal. That is when a lot of LARs, a lot of our members close because of mergers and acquisitions before the new billing cycle starts. So that's nothing alarming, quite expected. I put the source there. So if you want to check it out for the other RARs, you can do so there yourself. Now, when analyzing RPKI data, I also find it interesting to see what actually happens. So with the number I just mentioned, 18,000, that means that currently roughly 75% of our members have created a certificate, which is amazing. It's really high. But then the certificate is kind of useless if they don't follow on to the next step to create their ROAS, right? So I thought, okay, does everybody who has a CA also created their ROAS? And then I found out that a stunning 17% went to our dashboard, clicked create my certificate, was brought to the dashboard where they create ROAS, and then stopped. Now, there could be a number of reasons for that. First of all, training. What am I supposed to click here? this will have impact on my routing. I need to talk to my manager first before I create something, or simply I have no idea what to put there. So that's interesting to further analyze what the reason is, because 17% is quite a high number, I think. Another fun fact is that more than half of the RIPE-NCC space, so the space that is handed out by the RIPE-NCC, is covered with a ROA. And I have some numbers, more exact numbers on that in the next 2 slides. Another stunning thing that surprises me in 2022 is people still don't pay as much attention to IPv6 when they create their ROA. So oddly enough, they create the ROAs for IPv6, but then I'll show you how that looks in BGP in a second, which is kind of interesting. These are from the RPKI monitor from NIST. I find them the easiest to use to see the percentage of addresses that are covered by a ROA. And then you see for RIPE region, it's for IPv4, it's 52%, almost 53%. And you see only a very small fraction of invalids. And that is because if people create a BGP invalid RPKI object, then probably that has impact nowadays, right? People get alarmed, people are being told that they have an invalid. So people fix it. Now I'll get to the IPv6 point where I have some concerns. There you see that the number looks slightly different again, and that the number of invalids is significantly higher for IPv6. And I think this is something that we should raise a little bit more attention to. Because I know from my previous job where I was an IPv6 program manager that people switch on IPv6, but not the monitoring and alerting for IPv6. So there is something still to be done there. As Carla already mentioned, training, we believe, is essential. Unfortunately, in 2021, all we had was webinars, right? We were stuck behind Zoom, and what we still did 15 RPKI and BGP security webinars, so more than 1 a month, with an average of 23 participants. But we also know that operators want hands-on training. That's how they learn the best. And it's also a lot simpler to train when you can show somebody actually what is going on and how it looks like in their real world. So for this year, our training team is building a new lab environment for the training courses with more where they can play hands-on, and hopefully that will improve things as well, while we slowly go back to face-to-face courses, but we're not there yet. Now, Alex, who's also on this webinar, he is the one that helped build the easy user interface. We do get a lot of feedback that our user interface for creating ROAs is really nice. We show the BGP announcements that are there already, so they can create ROAs like how things are in real life or something completely different. When they are about to create a ROA that does not match what we see in BGP, they do get a warning and an alert saying, hey, you're about to create an RPKI invalid or BGP invalid RPKI object here. Is this really what you want to do? So we do alert them for that. But I see with Carla the same thing, that the max length is still the most painful point at the moment. Another thing that we did last year was doing route origin validation as RIPE-NCC ourselves for our own AS3333. That was a fun exercise because we learned that there were approximately 500 something routes that we would drop, and basically essentially meaning that the people behind these routes could not access the LAR portal, our member portal anymore, which is quite a bold thing to do. So we emailed essentially all those networks saying, hey, you have currently something that looks to be an invalid announcement. You might want to fix that. Otherwise, you need to use a different provider to get to the member dashboard. And that was quite a strong incentive to clean things up as well, as we learned. I put the link there if you want to read more on how that went. to be honest, it was quite uneventful for the rest. It was a lot, mostly it had to do with communications, right? And we see that normally with other things as well. It's all about communication and being clear in your communication. And otherwise, other than that, the technical side was quite smooth and straightforward. And that brings me to the end now. The roadmaps and stuff, we'll get to that in the discussion, I think, and I'll happily post links as we go along.
Thank you, Natalie. Brad.
Hello, everyone. Let me drive here. I have a very few slides and certainly not as visually pleasing as Natalie and Carla, so please forgive me. Can everyone see my screen? There we go. Okay. All right. So like I said before, I'm the product owner at ARIN, and actually the product owner position was opened and created just last January in 2021. It was something that ARIN both saw and heard that was a shortcoming in the support that we had been given. So this role was created, so I am the primary and sole owner and focus for the routing security products here at ARIN. So if you ever see me, hear me, feel free to drop an email. That's why I'm here. So some of the numbers that I have certainly are not as pleasingly displayed, but in the ARIN organization, in the ARIN region, we have 31,000, roughly 31,000 organizations that have directly assigned resources, of which 16,000 of them are under a contract, under one of the RSA, LRSA contracts that we require for use of RPKI. So that means roughly 53% are eligible to use our RPKI services. Of those, 15% have an RPKI certificate, and 82% of those who have created resource certs have at least one row published. So that actually is pretty close to Natalie's number that she said, and it is not alarming, but it is certainly an indication that there are people that are interested yet don't feel like they've had the information to move forward and start taking advantage of the RPKI services. So as far as address spaces that are in use using the unique origin pairs of the IPv4 resources in ARIN's region, year over year, we saw a 45% increase in the number of the resources that are now being published into RPKI. They have resources that have been published. And then as far as in the unique origin pairs, the actual address space, I'm sorry about both of those. The other one is the prefixes, the actual /24 prefixes is that second block. And we've seen a 14% increase again, year over year, in the use of announcing those blocks into the greater RPKI and into the BGP ecosystem. And then here are the numbers, the valid resource certificates that our organizations have created. We've seen a 20% increase so far this year, and year over year it was a 40% increase. So some of the features that either we have recently released or they're upcoming in our product development, the ARIN RPKI publication service for delegated customers was first released in March, on March 1st of this year. And just last week, we enabled the capability for organizations to add resources not only from the ARIN region, which was in the first iteration, the first release, but now can include resources that are in any RAR's region for entry into ARIN's repository. We have a consultation open right now under two-factor authentication. I will leave that to you to look into all the comments that were made. It has been very, very active comments with regards to how we would like to deploy two-factor authentication. But the drive for this is we want to make sure that organizations with resources are going to have those resources protected by another layer of security, so that mistakenly resources aren't going to be inappropriately taken out, requested, certainly any routing security features are going to be requiring some form of two-factor authentication. Tighter integration between RPKI and IRR. Some of my brethren, RIRs, have similar products already in place, but effectively it's making a calculation and a comparison when an org is going to create a ROA. Does it also have a matching IRR object in place, and allowing people to automatically or by manual create those during the ROA creation process. Aaron is going to be implementing a auto reroll onto ROAs created by organizations that have resources. This is definitely new at Aaron. Previously, we would give a default of 825 days for any ROA that was created, but in the kind of catch-all mentality, we are approaching the 10-year lifespan, which was the original number that was set for ROAs, and we don't want those organizations who may have lost track of the fact that they had created ROAs so long ago. We're going to start re-rolling those. We have new dashboard, both currently visible and upcoming. We have more visibility into how IP resources are being used, whether they are eligible for use for RPKI, and definitely with links to documentation of why this is the case and how to bring resources to be eligible. And along with that, certainly the documentation is coming to support all of the new features. Training, again, I'm going to keep saying it, and I'm sure we'll hear it from everyone else. Training is key. It is obvious that there is still a gap in the understanding of what RPKI means, what it means to you, how it will integrate and benefit everyone. So I personally, along with other members of my team, we've been giving some training sessions, whether they are in person at conferences or in the webinar format, and we plan on continuing to do so. We are working with our communications team to post the dates for upcoming sessions so everyone can be made aware of them. And then that last link basically is to our saved training, whether it's just a deck that followed a class, webinars that have been recorded, and we have some 5-minute short video how-to videos telling you how to do some of the simpler steps to get started, and give an understanding what's there and what we have. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. David.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mine will be very brief, unlike the rest of the colleagues. So I will start with what we observed in terms of member statistics. At the moment, we are just slightly over 20% of the adoption. We noticed an increase in the last, from around, let's say, end of 2019 to up to now. I think there are various contributing factors, both RIR-driven and also community-driven. I'm sure even the other colleagues from the other RIRs can relate to that. So this is good numbers for us, but we are not really yet there, being the youngest RIR at this point. So I pulled in some figures from our data team, slightly above 7K ROAs at the moment. And you can see that adoption, the rise in draw creations from around 2019 towards 2022. So yeah, it means some of the things we've been doing have been working. So we really need to dig in on maybe what more we can do to also increase this adoption. So I'll move into some of the contributing factors that we've observed. when working on these slides, I was looking at a period of the last 3 years. So we always had a challenge in terms of some complaints from members in terms of the enrollment mechanism we use, because you do have the first login and then the second authentication to access the resource certification. So for the longest, we did some research to adapt a simpler way of allowing members to get into this second bit, because we had a RPKI certificate where you enroll through the normal certificate process, whereby you create a certificate request. It is sent to our CA for signing, and then it's sent back to you and installed in the browser. And this process, the feedback was that it was too tedious, it was too complex. So over time, we went into developing a feature for two-factor authentication. This was implemented last year. And the reason I put an asterisk there is because I'll explain on the proceeding slides on that. So we did deploy a two-factor authentication last year. So another contributing factor that enabled like an increase in adoption is that we did empower the first level support requests. Initially, a lot of the RPKI related queries would be handled. They would be passed into the second level support. So because over time you gather this information and you know what can be handled faster and what can be escalated. So in a way, that sort of reduced the turnaround time in handling most of these requests, and majority of them you can say is, how do I take advantage of this? So enrollment was one of the factors, and then the next step now was what was done is the capacity building team. Now that is the third point. They've done a lot of deployathons. I think training has been mentioned by the rest of the other colleagues. I think this is a place where there's been a challenge. I think a lot of members, they come in and they're like, okay, what do I do with this? So we really need to strengthen this part. I think it will be a huge contributing factor in adoption. Our capacity building team also has e-learning materials available. This point is linked to the other point, number 4, the drive-by NOGs. This is obvious, at least when you have operators together and all that. It's obviously what this one is doing, the other one wants to do the same thing. And also I have to mention that I think in the last 3 years, I've seen these Alex there for MNet Labs. I think some of the tools that are RPKI related have really become easy to use in terms of validation or ROV, So I think this is also a contributing factor in adoption in our region. This is part of the enrollment stats that we had. So around, this is using the RPKI certificate feature, which for the longest, we always thought that it's a hindering factor because of the process of enrollment. We actually had a key rollover around 2020. So it means any existing members had to re-enroll and all that. But we did review our steps for enrollment, and surprisingly enough, we didn't have a challenge in terms of getting users back to use the certificates. So it was a wake-up call, because we always thought, okay, the barrier to entry was the enrollment bit, but it seems that was not really it. So we did deploy two-factor. So this is stats for the two-factor authentication. When it was adopted last year, you can see a lot of people came in, but the numbers have reduced. So I think it's something that's ongoing. We want to see, why are people not embracing this, as opposed to why is the other one that they used to complain about are still being used, and this one is the adoption is going down. My next slide is now maybe some of the observed challenges that we get. I think it has to do with the PKI related stuff. I think the learning curve is not as easy for most users. An example is also like enrollment and just usage of some of the terms that we talk about. They might be familiar to us, but I think when you go to a member, just what they want to take the resource, they want to use it in a certain way. So when you add these other layers, I think we really need to empower them with more information in terms of this part. On our side, for a region, we do not have as much features in our RPKI related service as the other regions. So we've had a request from large operators, to request us whether we will have APIs available. There's delegated mode. I can confirm that this has been discussed internally. This is ongoing work in progress on how to go about this. So, and we'll give the community information once a lot of the tests and production ready timelines are there. There's also another one that a colleague mentioned to me. I don't know how relevant it might be. I think this one won't be like a future challenge, but there were some members which had some vendor equipment which was not really RPKI ready. So I just thought maybe it's something I can mention that we've also seen as a challenge in the region. Ongoing development. So targeted members drive to increase adoption. I think this is self-explanatory, whereby for existing, we just pull the data. The ones who've not adopted, we reach out to them and then do drives for that. For new members, when you're onboarding them, apart from doing the routing registry, we also tell them, okay, you can also do this further with your resource. We're also working on an improved member portal user experience. I'm sure this has been mentioned by some of our communication channels. This is still work in progress. I cannot say the timelines right now. I don't want a colleague to come to me and say I promised something and then it wasn't delivered. And then the high availability of the service. This is a discussion both internally and at the NRO. I think Carla mentioned something that's going on. We don't have the full information of that yet, but I think this will be communicated as time goes. And finally, also we are also looking into integrating APIs and delegated mode. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Carlos.
Sure. Let me share my slides. Hopefully you can see them now.
Yes.
Okay. So continuing the trend, I have the less slides and probably the most I would say amateur ones. But please bear with me with it for a minute. One of the things that we always found challenging within a region is that there are two sides to RPKI. When we talk about RPKI deployment, we need to actually explain many times to different people that there are two things here. One is the actual creation of objects within the PKI, and one different thing is the implementation of route origin validation in routers. This is important in our region because we have this large asymmetry of member sizes. We have many very small members, and we have few very large ones. That has to do with how the telecom markets in the region have evolved. Mostly we're very concentrated and only slowly are being deregulated. So in many cases, these two things don't go together, right? People who have to create ROAS, they don't necessarily need to implement ROV. However, they think they do. And this becomes a sort of, I would say, roadblock to deployment because they get like paralyzed because they are thinking that they need to upgrade their routers and everything. One thing that is notable in our region, perhaps this is something we have in common with Afrinic, is that a lot of the installed base of routers is MikroTik, right? And MikroTik only recently supports RPKI, right? So this is important for us because in many cases people were afraid of actually starting to use RPKI because they thought that without implementing ROV, creating the ROAS was useless. And so this was something that we had to explain many times, and we still do actually. So again, this is something that it was a challenge to explain to people for a long time. So how we got off the ground? Back in 2012, a friend of ours, a former Slagnik staff who was working for Cisco at the time, had a brilliant idea, which was, let's go where the prefixes are. And he identified one IXP in the region in Ecuador, whose technical manager was very interested in RPKI and in actually solving an operational problem that they had. That was how to accept prefixes, new prefixes into the IXP with the less manual intervention possible. So after some discussion, they agreed to implement RPKI for their members. And then we created this program. This first one was kind of an experiment. Then we got very much better at it. And in the course of a 2-day event, we got from like 0 ROAS in the repository to almost every prefix in Ecuador to be signed. I'm going to show you a graph where this jump is clearly visible. So this was very successful. But back in 2012, they did have to update their routers because they were using equipment that didn't support ROV. But this became a trend. And then the next one was Crix in Costa Rica. They did the same thing, and it was very successful. And then others came along. And the interesting trend here is, as new IXPs are being created in the region, they assume and they consider that this is an integral part of the service that they need to provide. So, for example, one of the newest IXPs in the region in Bolivia, PIT Bolivia, they started with RPKI from almost the very beginning. So this experiment from early 2012, it's still going strong, and it's been very, in my opinion, very successful in our region. So forgive me for my notes are a bit all over the place. We are again still working on it with IXPs, but with individual operators as well. We have been running an IRR unified with RPKI for almost 3 years now. It was like a no-brainer for us because Slagnik didn't have an IRR before. So when created a new IRR, we basically sidestepped the whole legacy IRR thing, and we went straight to an RPKI unified IRR. We enabled two-factor authentication about a year and a half ago. We have been running a lot of webinars related to RPKI, and we don't make them RPKI specific. We call them secure routing webinars because we try to look at the problem of routing your prefixes in a safe manner in a broader context. And thankfully now we are again on the road, and we are having some in-person activities. We have a new services that is the API for hosted RPKI. We didn't have one, and we don't still have many customers for that service, but those who apply for it are actually using them in very interesting ways. Like, for example, people beaconing prefixes, like publishing, withdrawing. We've had like for almost 3 years now, up down for delegated RPKI. We only have actually one customer that uses up down. This is something interesting to discuss. I would have thought that many more will be interested in. I think this is something to do with the lack of diverse tooling for up down. We have a specific challenge for deployment in our region, is that we have NIRs. I think the only other region that has national internet registries is APNIC, but then again, our NIRs are a bit different because they have exclusivity within their countries. Those customers within Brazil and Mexico are served by the NIRs, and they can actually directly access services from LACNIC. So this required a lot of coordination and collaboration with both NIRs to actually deploy or provide the RPKI service to their members. Brazil has been running RPKI for 2 years, I think, since late 2018, and Mexico a bit longer. They use different mechanisms. For example, NIC Brazil uses up-down with us, and they run their own CA. And NIC Mexico, members from Mexico are using our own portal, and we have just federated authentications. We can log into our portal. Where are we now? This is a screenshot of a monitoring platform we have that is called Fort Monitoreo. I will put the link in the chat after I finish my slides. It has a few numbers that may be interesting. One of the challenges that I think we need to do something about this red slice here of invalids. So coverage, we are around 40% in IPv4. This is again from NIST Monitor. Good. I think it's a good. It's actually better than IPv6, which is around 30%. But it still has a lot of room to grow. This only tells half the picture, right? Because how many of the large operators are actually doing route origin validation? I would say that's much less. So these are my slides, and I will gladly ask you for your feedback and your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. So with the presentations finished, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I will start off with one prepared. I know this was brought up. We talked about invalids. And Natalie mentioned invalids being very small, partly because it's now causing reachability problems. Have any of you, or any of your organizations, put in place a process to notify members when ROAs become invalid that might impact their resources? Let's see, who can I call on? Brad, does Aaron have a mechanism in place to notify resource holders if their ROAs go invalid?
Yeah, the way it is configured right now, and Aaron they will get email notifications that go to the user dashboard, the user portal, and to the email address that was used when signing up for RPKI. It's the admin and tech contacts as well as a routing contact. So that is currently how an organization is notified when ROAs are approaching expiry. But once re-rolls happen, that kind of becomes moot. We will still continue to send emails, and if people think those emails are no longer necessary, we'll go ahead and take them out.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on notification of invalids?
Yeah, go ahead, Natalie. I think you're mute.
Yep, done.
Yes.
I'm here now. Right. Yeah. So a few things. For years already, we had in our dashboard where people that would create rows could set up alerts, email alerts, when they when we would see something in our routing information system, RIS, that showed that their ROAS or their routes would actually become invalid. That's what we're talking about, right? But then when we started route origin validation ourselves, it became more prominent to warn them from the start as well, if they would start to create something that didn't match with reality. So now we also have a big pop-up saying, is this in red? Is this really what you want to do? Because yeah, but now that by doing route origin validation ourselves, they would get an extra problem if they proceed that way, because then they could not reach our dashboard anymore from that network. So yes, both on both accounts. So in the process itself and then notified, but that is opt-in.
Thank you. Carlos, let's see, you have your hand up.
Sure, I have two comments. One is regarding ROAS invalid. In our case, ROAS shouldn't go invalid like ever. However, when I would say like a couple of versions of the system before, we didn't have automatic validations, automatic renovations, sorry, and it was possible for an operator that wasn't paying close attention to let the ROAS expire. So they would get an email warning them that their ROAS were about to expire. But in the end, we decided just to automatically renovate the ROAS. I think it's opt-in, but the default is on. I mean, you would really need to opt out of the, if you are a newcomer to the system, the default is to have the automatic renovations. But we still generate those emails, although very, very few of those emails ever go out nowadays. I know because I used to get a copy of them in a folder. Very few of those emails go out. Regarding invalid routes, however, we don't have an organic mechanism of notifying members regarding invalid routes. We do have some initiatives for those operators who have like hundreds of invalids, okay? We actually reach out to them and try to have them fix their invalids. And we've learned, however, a few interesting things doing that. Not everyone is actually convinced that having what I call baseline invalids is a bad thing. I disagree, but again, it was interesting to see that there are different views on that. We have in a roadmap probably for next year, creating a service that will basically produce a small report over email for members regarding their position of invalids.
Thank you. Carla.
I just wanted to reiterate, I did mention when I was going through my deck that that Dash is the place to go if you're wanting to actually check for invalids. So that is all of the RPKI and mismatch tools in Dash make it easy to check for invalids. And we will be having an opportunity for everybody to subscribe, our members to subscribe if they want to actually receive alerts, and moving on into the next quarter.
Thank you. And David.
Yeah, on our side, I think we don't have an automated way for this. I guess because also the low adoption numbers, it hasn't become a challenge yet, but it's something that we've discussed internally. So at the moment, what has been happening, when we notice, we reach out to an operator, or in some cases, some operators reach out to us to reach out to the contacts that we have for other operators. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Simon has a question on training, which is, I think, quite interesting. many of you spoke about training that you provided, but I'm wondering if we're reaching a plateau of self-adoption where the training we're doing isn't enough anymore. And he's asking, at least I think he's asking, do we try something else? Do we go out to the NOG umbrella and reach out to operators specifically not implementing RPKI? David, do we? Brad, I see you've got your hand up, and then Carlos.
Yeah, I think one of the next steps that's coming through that we are seeing at ARIN is service providers are now requiring organizations to have their resources covered in ROAs. Bring your own IP access to an org doing hosting services, or actual transit providers or tier ones that are also going to require or are currently requiring resources to be covered before completing sign up for a service. So the kind of force-fed begin to use RPKI is going to build the awareness, but the understanding again, what that means, it's going to come back to myself and my peers to say, hey, what does this mean? What is this RPKI? So I think that is a direction, a next step. As well, the number of networks that are doing validation or using a RPK validation state to make decisions based on what they're hearing, the next larger group ultimately is going to be the tier twos or in-country incumbent providers. As more networks begin to make decisions based on it, we're going to start to see a smaller and smaller, attack vector going to be available to people who want to do it. But beyond the RIRs trying to raise the flag and scream from the mountaintop, I think it's going to be these next groups of service providers that kind of kick the can further down the road.
Thank you, Brad. Carlos.
Well, basically, I'm going to rephrase what Brad said. I completely agree. I think the phase of self-adoption, someone mentioned, I think is a nice term. Yeah, I think that's basically over, that people are adopting a technology because that's an interesting, slightly nerdy thing to do, but not necessarily very useful. That part is, it's important. I think in every technology, it's important to have that phase, that experimental phase. But I think that's over. And I think that today, the adoption of RPKI will be mainly driven by business goals. And that's what we are seeing in our region. Just what Brad described perfectly, the requirement by content providers, by tier one carriers, by IXPs in our region. That was an very interesting experiment, in my opinion, is what it's driving the adoption of RPKI. I have a graph in one of my slides that actually shows you how growth was mostly linear until the end of 2019, something like that, and it became very exponential. And it grew very, very fast.
Thank you. Michael asks, I think, a very important question. And how did the various RIRs handle the need for high availability systems for provisioning and publishing? Is there any use of Anycast for publishing? And I will also add, when you comment on this, is not only do I want to ask about the high availability for publishing, but also the support. Some of you mentioned help desks. Now that the RIRs are in a much more real-time environment in the routing infrastructure, how are you handling support, out-of-hours support for RPKI issues? I see Natalie is got her hand up, please.
Yeah, I'm quite passionate on this, on both these topics. The thing is, yes, we are as RIRs now in a relatively new position already for a few years, where we operate the trust anchor, and in that also the publication services that we offer. And there are two things about that's really important to understand. A repository can be available for a little bit, as Brad demonstrated earlier. However, the integrity, so the data that is there, must be intact all the time. So this is where things get complex. And so what we are doing at RIPE NCC, we now have on-premise publication service, but with 2 different CDNs in front of that. We switch CDNs every week to keep going and to make sure that everything is still in place and all right. This is still done manually because we want to have a 4 eyes check when we roll, but eventually we'll automate that. And if all CDNs go down for some reason, we can roll back to fully offsite as well in AWS. Now, so there is redundancy there. There is geographical spread, etc., etc. So high availability, yes, but equally important is the integrity of that data. So and yeah, I'm puzzling a bit with how we can do that with any cast, with serial numbers, etc., etc. Then it goes a little bit technical, but that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. I believe for now, for 2022, we are good with this dual CDN plus offsite solution. But this is something that we will keep an eye on and start to think about new ways of doing things for that. On the 24/7 story, we have RPKI in our 24/7 services already for, I think, 8 years or something, 7 years. Now, this is not 24/7 for in the case somebody creates an invalid route. So this is just for our platforms, obviously, and not if somebody makes a typo in their ROA. I hope that answers it from the RIPE NCC side. Thanks.
Carlos, please.
Sure. We do for high availability. We try to have a clean separation between publishing points and the actual creation of the cryptographic material. We have actually an intermediate step where we pre-validate what is being produced by the system before publishing. Paraphrasing the doctors, medicine doctors, first do no harm. So if we have a valid repository published, do not touch it unless you're sure that what we are going to push to the front ends is actually a valid repository again. So this actually helps us with the 24/7 story because we have actually tuned our validity times in order to actually survive the night, if you will. So it will be very unfortunate. It's something really breaks everything during the night. That's never happened. I didn't think. We will have to be very, very unlucky for that to happen. As Natalie said, we monitor the repositories and the publishing points 24/7, but we currently do not offer 24/7 help desk. I mean, if you made a mistake creating a ROA, if you are having an issue with your two-factor authentication during the night, you will have to wait a few hours. That's probably in the future will have to be revisited, but it's going to be a learning process. In my particular case, I used to work for an ISP, so we had 24/7 help desk and everything. So I am very well aware of the challenges that implementing such a thing implies. Regarding publishing, we do the geographical spread. We have 5 nodes in 3 different places right now. They are handling the load very well. We plan to enable 2 more nodes in the coming weeks, I would say, just to be sure. And that's basically it. Thank you.
Carla, please.
Sorry, I was looking for my unmute. So very similar to Natalie, it's also something that we are looking at how we provision help desk services more broadly. We did actually start providing 24/7 support at the beginning of this year. but that's mostly that's not necessarily for RPKI, but that is for emergencies, but that depends on how you define emergencies. So what has happened, it was really done as a trial for us to see what kind of response we got, mostly around anything that we were monitoring, exactly as Natalie said, anything that looked like it really needed our attention, our IST would jump on it. But if there is something where if there's an outage that's created, they wake up one of our team. In fact, it's usually one of the two people that are on this call as well, Pipidi or Vivek, get woken up in the middle of the night and they jump online and fix it because they're just good people. So it is very much a manual process and as need process. So yeah, we're on the same boat there.
David.
Thank you. On our side, in terms of high availability, the way we've approached it so far is what has been mentioned before. We are looking at the public-facing part of things with the publication, repos and all, and then also on the back end. On the back end, it's more critical with the cryptography operations. We do have some mechanisms here and there that we are trying. It's obviously a learning process, but we try to. It is as critical as it is because we do have the necessary escalation mechanism in case something happens. That's on the infrastructure part. On the help desk, I think we do not have that 24/7 response yet. I think it's something that we will look into as the requests come in, because at the moment we don't have that high number of requests in terms of that support. Yeah, thank you. And for the Anycast, we haven't done anything on that part yet, but it's actually an interesting discussion point. Yeah.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, so redundancy-wise, the multiple installation model that all the other IRRs follow, yes. We do have, all our sites are in different power grids across North America. So the Eastern, Western, and inside of the Texas power grid. Each of those individual sites has disparate carriers. There are 5 carriers that we use across the 3 sites that we have. We're starting, we're tiptoeing into doing a cloud hosted or installation of the RPKI services. With regards to the help desk, yeah, we are a 12 hours, 7 a.m. 7 p.m. East Coast US time, full help desk. During the off hours between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. East Coast time, the internal monitoring systems that we have that will report either service going down or technology going down, there is a 24-hour on-call operations pager number, and there is we are beginning to roll out a 24/7 pager for our help desk. That's not that isn't implemented yet, but it's in the works, being looked at soon.
Thank you. Tony asks, which has partly been answered in the chat by Alex, which RIRs will show in their portal UI a view of the global routing table for their resources and the effect that a given ROA creation will have on the route tables that are visible. Does anybody want to add additional comments on that?
We don't have that, but I think it's a cool idea, actually. I'm going to note that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll absolutely mirror what Carlos said. No, we don't have that capability in our portal right now. One thing I'd like to say is that if anyone in the community, it does not need to be an ARIN organization, but anyone out who looks at or uses ARIN resources, ARIN does have a suggestions portal, direct link off of our front page on ARIN.net to Ask ARIN. There is a formal suggestions process that people can use to make requests for features, products, updates to products that we already have. And it is a internal requirement that we post every suggestion visible to the community. So if someone asks for something, maybe there might be duplicates, but it can be tracked, and responses are public to requesters. So please take advantage of something like that. If there's capabilities or features that you don't that an Aaron does not provide, or you would ask Aaron to provide, please go ahead and use that.
Thank you. Vivek, you have a question you want to ask?
Just answering this question about the feature for BGP. So for APNIC, in our portal, we have this feature for import from BGP. So when our members log in, it will suggest ROAs based on BGP. So that's something we do now. And the next feature we are working on is to give pre-validation. So while you're importing, it will alert you if what you're trying to create does not match with your BGP. So that's something we will do next. But for now, we do have a tool which will suggest ROAs based on what we see in BGP.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions on APIs. So Amrish starts with, are there any plans for the RIRs to have a standard unified API to manage RPKI objects? Manners was recently, or recently ran a research study involving the creation of ROAs in the 5 RIRs, and it was pretty challenging to use the 5 different interfaces. Some operators have address space in different regions, so a unified API might be beneficial. And Carlos, you want to start us?
Yeah, that's a topic that is very dear to me, and probably Amrish remembers long conversations we had on the topic during some IETFs long ago. Thank you for bringing that up, Amrish. I think that's, I agree that it's very painful. Actually, if I was still working for an ISP, I would probably hate that. The best thing that I can offer now is that we are aware of the issue, and I think we have been able, I mean, the collective we, the 5 of us who are here representing the RIRs, have actually been able to create the awareness within our communities that some level of compatibility, not only for RPKI actually, for some other services as well, it's an important thing to aim for. However, for RPKI, I have one comment that is due to my good friend George Michelson that said, well, to an extent, that unified API for RPKI already exists, and it's called UpDown. So, like I mentioned when I was presenting my slides, I'm really curious why UpDown uptake is so low.
Does anybody want to share why the up-down relationship has not taken off?
Do you mean, for the clarity, Carlos, you mean up-down, you mean delegated RPKI?
Yeah, delegated. Yeah, I used to call I'm very used to call it up-down. Yeah, delegated RPKI. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Now, yeah, we also have not that many delegated or up-down users. One of the reasons we keep hearing is that they don't find it that difficult anymore to create their ROAs, etc. But the publishing is a pain. So running a publication service, right? That has to be highly available, at least the integrity, etc. All these checks and balances that they don't want to take that responsibility for, and this is where what we call then in short words hybrid RPKI, that probably will have different names for all the different RIRs. Talk about unification. But yeah, we all understand what the hybrid actually means, is where people run their own CA, create their own ROAS, and then use the RAR to publish that information in the repository. I think that if we simplify that process by offering that service, and also offering that for all the RARs, like APNIC and Erin are now doing, that would be, and it is also on our roadmap, is very much helpful. And if we can, like Alex from NLNet Labs wrote really cool documentation on how to set that up for APNIC and for Erin. And I think helping with that part, but taking away the burden of the of the publishing side, I think that would help. Hopefully.
Okay. Nick has some specific questions on APIs for both Carla and Brad. For Carla, will there be an API for provisioning IRR and RPKI objects?
Yes. So I was looking for the mute button to come back and say that. In fact, Vivek just dropped a link in there directly answering that question. And I'm just scrolling back frantically to find it. So there is a blog there about that specific subject. So I will just paste it in again. Hold on a second. So, because otherwise it's just going to be hard for everybody to see. Here we go. There it is there. So, so that's definitely part of our plan. And I'm not sure that we actually have a target date for it yet. Do we, Vivek, may be able to tell me?
Not a target date. So we have a test bed now, and we are welcoming members to try it and give us
That's right. Yeah, there's a test bed. So that's the thing. Yeah. So we would really appreciate, again, any feedback on that. So if you follow that link, there is actually a link in that blog, I've just remembered now, that actually takes you to that test bed that we can get some feedback on it.
Thank you. And I see Brad has answered in the chat. We're approaching. Sorry, go ahead.
Andrew, I didn't quite answer Nick's question. So specifically, Nick, you're asking, I want to make sure, creating APNIC, creating ROAs for APNIC resources and being put into our hybrid repository. I think that's what you're saying, and the answer is yes. That's the capability that was just opened up last week. The need, it's necessary for the CA to have its own, relationship with the RAR to get that resource certificate in order to make it happen. But yes, resources from any RAR will be able to go into or now are able to go into the hybrid repository.
Thank you. We are approaching the end of our time. I'll try to get the last couple of questions in, because Simon asks an important question, and that is, what are the RARs doing to make sure that at least a handful of relying party software are properly funded for the ecosystem to flourish? We only have a limited set of software for self-hosted CAs. So are the RARs doing anything to make sure that there's a healthy software ecosystem? Anybody want to chime in? Carlos, please.
Sure. Thank you for that question. I missed the name of the person who had this question. Thank you very much for that. I think you raise a very, very, very critical point. And I think we are, if I was to make a parallel, I would say we are in the same state that the DNS industry was like 20, 25 years ago. It was basically one usable implementation of a DNS server. So here I can only speak for LACNIC. We've been doing two things. We've been raising awareness within our board and our whole community about the importance of supporting certain open source projects. We did some, we actually contributed some funds during 2020 and 21 to NLNet Labs to work on Krill and other projects. And we had a project in partnership with NIC Mexico to implement a validator, which is called our fourth validator, which is now in version 1.52 something. There was not, I mean, we funded it. Most of the development work was done by NIC Mexico. And in an interesting turn of events, two of the developers of Ford are now working for us, for LACNIC. And it's going to be an in-house project now. Ford is going to be an in-house project. Still open source, of course. You are very welcome to contribute code, report bugs, and everything. But I agree that it would be nice to have more. I would say not only hosted CAs, but I would say the whole environment of tooling needs a lot of diversity to be useful and to be sustainable in the long run. I mean, relying party tools, self-hosted CAs, monitoring. I don't know if you've been following the great work that Massimo Candela, former RIPE NCC, has been doing with BGP Alerter. That is very, very, very interesting and very useful as well. So yeah, I think we need to foster the open source community to produce more and more diverse tools. Thank you.
Carla, please.
And it's me that now has the heart attack every time you say Carlos. I think that you say Carlos.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's really confusing, Carla. We need to talk about this.
No, I'm just going to change my name. Actually, most Australians call me Kylie anyway. So you know, so we are again. There's it's all about the education side of it. RPKI deployathons, which I've already mentioned, getting the operators and vendors together to share experiences. I think that is a really important thing that we can do, that we can facilitate, and we are perfectly positioned to do that. So that's an ongoing focus for us. Specifically around, and I'm just conscious of time, specifically around funding. If there are projects that you think are really worthwhile in our region specifically, I would encourage you to reach out to our foundation. They do provide funding for exactly this kind of thing. So anything that is going to be enhancing our offering to the community, we'd be very interested to hear about how we can facilitate that. And when I say we, I'm talking about the foundation, not necessarily APNIC themselves.
Thank you. We are within 2 minutes of our allotted time. I don't think we have time for any more questions, but if there are any closing comments from the panelists that you'd like to share, please do so.
Yes, one more thing, because the others all had their roadmaps up on slides, I didn't. So I'm going to put our roadmap and how to give feedback on that roadmap and all that, I'm going to put in the chat right now. And that's it for me. Thanks very much. Thank
you, Natalie. So with that, we've finished on time. We've covered just about all of the questions. I want to thank the panelists for their time and everyone for attending. I think there's been a lot of good information back and forth. I've certainly learned a lot, especially about the NRO's effort to harmonize the RPKI program. I think that's an important effort. So I look forward to hearing more about that. And with that, I think we will close this session. Again, thank you,
Andrew, and thank you, everybody. I think it's been I'm really impressed with the questions and the robust discussion. And if there was anything that you didn't get answered, that you still have burning questions, just feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm easy to find on the APNIC website.
Yeah, I would echo Carla's words. I thank you very much for this session. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Isaac. I think these kind of panels are very, very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks to my team for the support as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Just jumping in to say, don't forget to join tomorrow, same time. We have a great deal of gifts to give away for the last day of the RPKI week. So don't forget to join in. Till then, thank you so much. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, Andrew, for moderating it. Thank you. See you again.
Great.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.